Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing my January wrap up, and I thought this was going to be a very melancholy video, but it turns out I had a pretty good end of month reading experience yesterday on the 30th, because yes, I'm filming this on the 31st, but I actually wasn't going to film this until tomorrow because I had a current read that I was going to try and finish, and then I just really didn't like it, so I just DNF'd it. So I was like, okay, I guess I can film earlier than I thought I would, so that's awesome. So we are here, we are filming. Unfortunately, it is incredibly gloomy outside, so whenever it's gloomy, because I use my phone still, this is a very low production, and it gets a little grainy, so if it is a little grainy, I apologize for that. Moving on, we are going to be talking about the books that I read in January, and they are a shocking number. I read 19 books in January. Shocking. I don't know if I've ever read that many books in a month. I feel like that's normal for a lot of booktubers, but for me that was like shocking. And we even have like a couple of books that are over 500 or almost at 500 pages. So I was like, I really got through a lot of stuff. My dog just sat next to me and farted. What are you doing? He's a mess this morning. He's unhappy to be downstairs. He wants to be upstairs in the bed still, even though it's 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. Hi, baby. I am not going to show him to the camera because he just went outside and it is very muddy outside, and his feet, even after I clean them, are still disgusting. So distracting. So distracting. And I'm wearing white pants, so we're not trying to do that. Anyway, like I said, I read 19 books this month. I am amazed. I also did a really good job DNFing. I have 4 DNFs from this month. I am so proud of myself that I didn't continue reading them, especially with the one today. I really was going to push through the one today, but I got to this one part of it and I was like, and I'm done. And I'm done. I'm not doing this. So I am so incredibly proud of myself, and we're going to be talking about those first. First, we're going to really quickly talk about the manga, because I just say that I read them. They pretty much all get 5s. Like, I'm not very distinguishable when it comes to manga. It's a separate category for me. But I managed to read volumes 7 through 10 of Kamasami Kiss. And I love these books. They're so much fun. They're fantasy, light romance. You saw him jump up there, right? He had no room to jump up. I'm impressed with that, to be honest. They are like light romance currently. I know they get heavier, but as of currently, it is light romance. It is definitely more about the fantasy and the adventures of the group, which is really fun, and I am very much enjoying it, and I am so excited to continue. I have 2 more volumes upstairs, and then I'm gonna have to start finding more volumes again, because this is one of those series that is very difficult to find because they keep going out of stock. And now let us move on to the DNFs. The first book that I DNF'd this month was really not a surprise for me. I was kind of almost looking for a reason to DNF it, but it was if you want to know more about it, it was in my reading the worst rated books on my TBR list, and it is The Queen's Secret by Melissa de la Cruz, and I even say in there, I am not picking up another book by this author. And it's not just because of this book. I DNF'd her whole other series, Blue Bloods, as well, and I just don't enjoy her writing. This is the second book in the Queen's Assassin series, and it's just pass. It's a hard pass. That is the first one that I DNF'd this year. The next one that I DNF'd, I'm actually really sad about, but it is the Poison series by Mara Rutherford, and this had a clause on it where if I DNF'd this one, the other book that I gave 3 by this author, I'm going to get rid of. So Luminous by the other author was an okay book, but the ending was so bad that I got like a 2.753. And I was kind of like holding on. I was like, maybe I'll get another book by this author, because I hate getting rid of books and then getting another book by the same author and then really liking that one, because I for some reason I just want to have all the books by the author. So that's why I'm weird about getting rid of books. But DNF this baby. It was I don't even know how to explain it. Beautiful cover, but I literally get no enjoyment out of this cover because there's so much animal death in this book. So you're following, and I love the premise. The premise is so good, and the writing's actually okay. So it was really just the animal death in this that was just disturbing. I honestly don't know how someone writes like this. like this many animal deaths. I don't get it, and how you're not affected yourself. But we're following a main character who has some sort of and also the plot didn't really make that much sense, so maybe the writing wasn't actually that good. There's a group of magical people who are on an island, and surrounding the island is a poisoned lake, and near that poisoned lake is a scary forest, and they are guardians of this stuff. I don't know why they just don't leave and burn the whole place down. That's what I'm confused about. Like, this place literally kills people. Why aren't you burning it down and putting signs up saying don't go in, poison? That's my other biggest thing, is I don't get why they keep protecting it. I don't know. Well, this is a hard pass. I think I made it maybe 50 pages and I was like, I can't do this. This is horrible. So no. The next one that I DNF'd was The Reunion, a Book of the Month choice by Kayla Olson. The writing was just bad. It was following our two main characters who are actors, and they acted in the same thing when they were kids, and now they're having a reunion episode of this thing, so they're coming back together. There was just such a lack of attempt of building rapport between the two characters. Like, they supposedly were besties when they were younger, and then he suddenly just stopped talking to her, and then they left the show, and they haven't talked to each other for like 20 years or 15 years, and then suddenly he's texting her and treating her like they're besties again. There's no discussion really about why they fell out. There's no angst really. There's nothing like that. And the texts are just absurd. Like, a lot of it is him texting her, and they're just absurd. They sound so stupid. They sound like a caricature of someone texting their crush. So cringy. And I didn't like, there was no chemistry between the characters because they didn't talk about anything serious. They just flirted with each other now that they're back on good terms, but they don't talk about that really. They talk about it very, very briefly, and it was so anticlimactic. You're like, but the point of this is that little conflict. Because of that, there's literally no backbone to this story at all. So I did not enjoy it. I DNF'd pretty far in too. I got to like 120 pages, 140 pages, and I was just like, I don't like this. And the final one that I DNF'd this month today was Lunar Love, The Other Romance by Book of the Month. And I know it's not because I don't love romance, because I love romance. The writing, again, was so bad. I'm so confused how these books are getting through editing. I don't understand. Like, this book and The Reunion feel like something that would have been caught in editing and said, okay, fix this situation, fix this. Instead, it's just so not good. And I really, really hate saying that, because the premise for this one, again, is fantastic. But a premise cannot make a book. It doesn't make the book. The writing and the characters, that's what makes a book. A book with a generic plot line, but a very good writer and compelling characters is a good book. Good idea with one-dimensional characters, a terrible main character. She is awful. And just bad writing, chunky, abrupt, cringy writing is going to make a book bad no matter how good your idea is. So the idea behind this book is she is a matchmaker, and she is inheriting her grandmother's love matching store, and it's been running for 50 years, and it's a big deal to the family, and it's their pride and joy. They live in Chinatown, which is cool. I loved their descriptions of Chinatown and the family. I loved the family. But the second you just focus on her, she is one of the worst main characters I've read in a while. She has no personality. The only thing she cares about is matchmaking. And then, of course, she's very snobby about her business versus other people's businesses. So the guy that she meets early on in the story, turns out that he is also into the Zodiac, and he is creating a matchmaking service that bases it on your zodiac and your interests in the algorithm. And she, of course, has a huge problem with this because, number one, she thinks it's a travesty, and number two, she thinks it's going to take away from business. So I like the idea, but she's catfishing him now, and I hate that. And she's horrible. She's so terrible. He shows up at the date after she fixed that, after she went onto his app, got his zodiac, figured out how to maneuver the algorithm, matches with him, and meets him at this place, and he brings her flowers. Like, it's so sweet. And the first thing she says is she looks at the flowers and she goes, "Those look like you're going to a funeral." What? Are you actually kidding me? That's so rude. That's so rude. I cannot understand the audacity of someone to act like that on a first date. I would be gone. I would be 1000% gone. Like, if I showed up at a date and I brought, like, I wouldn't bring, like, if Lucas, my husband, if I went to a first date with him and I decided to bring him something, like a type of beer or something, because I want to bring him flowers, a signed baseball, something that a guy would like, and he looks at it and goes, well, I don't like that player, I would be like, okay, bye, I'll take my little baseball with me and leave. So if I'm him, I take my flowers, bring them home, put them in a vase, and say, oh, this is a lot nicer company than the person I was with. So I could not understand the audacity. And it was supposed to be like a cute little quip, and I was just like, this is not cute. This is not cute. It is not a quip. This is terrible. You don't act like this. So I don't like it. I don't like the catfishing. She's horrible. He seems really sweet, and I'm over it. Okay, we are finally onto the books that I actually read and that I actually rated, and I would say I had a quantity over quality month this month, unfortunately, because, like, part of me is excited because I read a bunch of books, and then part of me is just like, I feel like a lot of them weren't very quality, and a lot of them I feel like I had similar issues of, like, writing styles and just, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting more picky. Maybe I'm just more picky this month or something than I normally am, because normally I'm much more generous than I feel like I was for the books this month. But anyway, we're going to start with the first book that I finished in January. Actually, technically I started this in December, but I count books I finish in the month as that book for that month, obviously. So the first book that I actually finished on the first of the month, on the first of the new year, which was really exciting, was Mindwalker by Kate Dillon. This is a sci-fi. I actually was able to get my hands on a pretty cheap copy of the Goldsboro edition, so it's got a little thing, a little ribbon, and it's sprayed edges, and the cover is different. It's so pretty. I love this. So this one is following our main character, Syl, who is a Mindwalker, and basically she has been trained since childhood to use this very strange and very dangerous computer in her brain to take over the brains of operatives in her company and execute a mission on her side of things, like over the connection. So a lot of times when you get in a mission, if it seems impossible, you start making mistakes, you don't have blueprints, you can't look at stuff going on, and you start getting nervous and you'll end up dead. So they basically, in situations that are almost unget-outable or dangerous situations, they'll call a Mindwalker, have them take over, and they're able to execute the mission based on their computer, helping them get through best courses, etc. Love it. So that is just such a cool thing, except the problem is these computers are on a time schedule. So pretty much they start corroding your brain and start glitching, and there's no way to fix them because they're embedded so badly into your brain that about by 17 she will be dead. But if you sign on to this program, your family is taken care of. So it's normally, number one, you have to qualify for the program, and number two, most of the time it's these poor kids who can't afford anything else, and they give up their life to save their family. And the family has no choice because kids have autonomy in this world, basically probably for this program, so the parents can't say no, because pretty much all the parents would say no. This is such a good book. I gave this a 4.25. This is one of my best books of the month. This was so fun to read. There's a really, really tense scene in here where this is also in like nuclear fallout aftermath kind of thing, so there will be like nuclear clouds that will rush, and you have to go to like the emergency places to sit tight while it passes, and there's a super intense scene during that is so good. This also has a really, really good found family. It's very emotional, it's very tense, and it's so good. And the romance isn't the highlight of this, which I appreciate. I'm glad they didn't try to shove the romance down your throat. It's just a cute little addition that kind of just livens up the story a little bit, and he's really fun. I like him. He's a good duality to her personality. So this is a really, really good one. I highly suggest this if you want to read a sci-fi. I can't wait for the second one to come out. I don't think it's I don't know if it's following her, but there is a second one that is coming out, and I cannot wait for it. The next one that I read this month was something I just wanted to read really quickly, and I read most of it at work, actually, because I work in a lab. Sometimes if you're not getting a lot of samples, you're just sitting there. So I ended up reading this, and I weirdly enjoyed it. I didn't think I'd enjoyed it as much because I hadn't heard great things about it, but it is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, and this was a fun book. It took me a little while to get into, but it's very short. It's only about 151 pages, or a little over that. I missed a chapter. Some over 150 pages. And it is a retelling of The House of Usher. I have never read The House of Usher, so I didn't know anything about it going in, which I kind of liked because everything was a bit of a surprise, especially the end. The end was really good. I would say it kind of dragged. However, the end was creepy. I was really creeped out at the end of this, and I gave this a 3.75 just because, again, the beginning was a little slow, and for a novella, you gotta really get people in, and I feel like it took them a little bit too long. But I did really enjoy it, and I got major Mexican Gothic vibes from this because of the nature of the like fungus kind of thing taking over. Like, it's nature horror and a little bit of body horror, so I definitely got some Mexican Gothic vibes from that type of horror. It was really, really fun, and I'm glad. I so love Mexican Gothic that I've been searching for something that makes me feel the same. The Hacienda was pretty close, that eerie, creeping feeling, even though the horror was different, but this was much closer, in my opinion, to Mexican Gothic vibes. You might not like it, but the vibes were definitely there, especially at the end. The next one that I read was kind of a surprise because I didn't know it was young adult until I did my new releases in January video. So I was like, I've been expecting an adult release by Talia Hibbert, but it is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. This is a cute book. This is so cute. There's nothing that is going to really like stick out in this book a ton. It was just a really, really cute read, and I think one of the better young adult romances I've ever read. It felt more real, and I gave this a 4-star. The characters were just so fun and lovely, and I absolutely adored them, and like I said, it felt more real. They actually talked about like sex a few times, which I feel like most young adult books try to avoid because they're afraid that kids are too young, but this is like 17, 18-year-olds, and I'm glad they introduced that idea that it exists. It exists in these kids' brain. They're going through horrible hormonal times. So if you want to know more about this book, I do a review on it. There's no spoilers in it because there's not any spoilers. It's just a really cute, fun, enemies to lovers kind of situation going on. My phone tried to die, so the angle might be a little different than it was. Anyway, I forgot. I actually did an audiobook. And I don't have the physical copy of it, so I'll pop it up right here. Our Wives Under the Sea. I did a full review of this. I am not rehashing this. I gave this a 2. Although, like, the more I think about it, I will say a 2.5. We'll go to 2.5. I didn't jive with this. I thought it was very strange. My biggest issue with this book is you would be going along very well in the plot, and then the author would be like, just kidding, let's talk about super mundane things. I hated it. I hated that aspect of it. But this one is following our 2 main characters. One is our main character, and her chapters are talking about the slow descent of her wife basically into this depressive, manic state and turning into something she doesn't recognize. And the other smaller chapters are following the actual wife in the past when she was actually on this like mission that kind of triggered what's happening in the current day. So her wife, our main character, her wife went on a submarine and went missing for 6 months, and when she came back, she did not come back exactly correct. I did really like the end and the message that I got from the end, but I just didn't like the rest of the book. Okay, the next one that I read was actually for my Wheel of No Appeal spin for January, and I would highly suggest going to check that out because I'm not going to talk about this one that much, and I talk about a lot in the other video. A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. This was one of my more anticipated books for whenever it came out. I don't know when it came out. And this one is following our main... This one's hard to describe, especially after having read it. It's hard to describe. There's parts in the book. So in the first part, we're following a main character who's trying to figure out what happened to this girl who disappeared, and then he disappears. That's not a spoiler. That's in the synopsis. And then it opens up to the real story, which is following 2 people in this cult-like environment up in the woods, hidden, where it seems like possibly the rest of the world has been struck with some sort of disease, and they have to stay in this clearing to make sure that they don't get sick. And so you're following that, and it's weird. It's a weird book. It's interesting. I feel like it definitely dragged in some places, and I did like the end, but it was just, oh man, it really dragged. It was a really long book, and I don't feel like it probably needed to be this long. And I was much more interested in part 1 with that guy trying to find her than anything else. So, and the twist was weird. The twist was very strange, and I don't know how logistically it would actually work. So, yeah, if you've read it, you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I give this a 3.5. It was fine. I expected better from this author because her other 2 books are 5 stars, so now I'm scared to read the next one, which is A Wilderness of Stars, which I have upstairs. Terrified to read it. The next one that I read, we're going to quickly go over because this is in my, again, rating my lowest books on my TBR. It was Shadow in the Glass. I gave this 2 stars because the ending was horrendous. And there's some traumatic moments in here I wasn't expecting, but mostly it was the end. The end is very weird and ambiguous, but you're following basically a dark Cinderella retelling, and it is dark. There is no happy ending. This is dark. I did not take it at face value. This is dark. And our main character is stuck in this house as a servant to this rich, creepy dude, and she meets a fairy godmother, who is definitely not a fairy godmother, and is granted 7 wishes, but at the end of the 7 wishes, she'll get her soul taken. So she's dealing with the wishes, dealing with her circumstances. It's just a rough book, man. It's a rough book. I liked most of it, and then the ending was so horrible. All the bad choices were made at the end, and it just didn't wrap up in a way that was satisfying whatsoever. Like I said, I talk about it a lot in that video. Same with this one, Star Daughter. This was the next one that I read also for that video. This one got a 3. I like this one a little bit better. I would say the beginning is a 4, and the end, the ending was a bit odd. The ending is probably a 3.5, and the middle was probably like a 2.5, because it did drag. It dragged significantly. But we're following our main character, who is a star daughter. She's the daughter of a star who has gone back to, the mom has gone back to the sky, and an incident happens where she's slowly becoming more star-like, and she ends up accidentally burning her father, and she has to go get the tears of a star because it's super healing. So she ends up having to go up there, and while she goes up there, she gets roped into this competition thing happening. It was fun. I actually really did enjoy this book. I not once wanted to DNF it. I enjoyed the story. I would say this book is more for contemporary readers because the story was much more about family than the actual fantasy aspect. Like, there's definitely plenty of fantasy, but the point wasn't the fantasy. The point was her finding herself and dealing with a difficult family situation. So I would say more people who are interested in contemporary young adult would try this, but it is very chunky. Next one that I read was also a 3, and a big disappointment because I really, really wanted to like this one. I have a full review out with spoilers, so again, barely gonna talk about this one. This is What Lies in the Woods. This was a book of the month thriller choice, and it was something. Basically, we're following our main character who has a little friend group, and they were attacked when they were children by the serial killer. The serial killer was put into jail by them, and basically one of them was lying. Don't know what's going on, don't know who's lying, or all of them lying, or was the person actually lying? I don't know. It was a lot about lying. And unreliable narrator issues, and I would say this is a fun one to read. I just didn't love the ending. The ending got way too convoluted that if I were to explain the ending again, I don't know if I could. I tried to explain it as best I could in that spoiler video of this book review. Don't know if I got it right. That's how confusing the ending was. That's all I'm going to say about that. It was a very interesting atmospheric read though. The next one that I read is the last one for that lowest rated books on my TBR, and I am so happy to say that this one was a 4. I actually really, really enjoyed this one, and I cannot wait to pick the second one up, although I'm sad because the second one and the third one have a different cover. They have a different cover for the first one, but this is what I picked up at the store when I bought it, so I'm kind of sad because I love this. I think this is such a cool cover, and I wish they had continued this instead of what they changed it to. I don't love what they changed it to. But anyway, we're following Marion Lane, who is a apprentice spy, basically, working for this underground organization who you basically give anonymous tips to, and they deal with crime that the police may not handle, etc. It is so much fun. It is so much fun. There's gadgets. There's such cool stuff in this book that I was surprised more people didn't like it, but it is a very, very cozy type mystery, and I'm curious if people went into it not thinking it was cozy, but this is a cozy mystery, a very cute, generic, not very high stakes, although there was a couple high stakes towards the end, book, but I really enjoyed it. It was such a fun read. The next book is actually a reread, and I'm so glad I reread it. I ended up rereading it with my husband, and it was just as good as the first time I read it, and it was Ninth House. I love this book. I love this book. The thing is about books that I reread, I actually don't count them in, I count them in my like count about how many books that I read, because I read this full book again, but I don't count it in my like favorites. Like at the end of the year, even though this is probably one of the favorite books I read this year, I'm not going to count it because it was my favorite book when I read it the first time. So I'm not going to count it again. I'll probably bring it up when I bring up, you know, the other book, because it will be in favorites of the year, just so you know, because it's back there. But yeah, I don't count it separately just because I feel like, I don't know, I don't feel like it's not fair. I could just read this every year and it would beat everything else. So I don't count this. I'm not going to count this as a favorite book of the year. But if you don't know anything about Ninth House, don't know where you have been. Ninth House is following our main character, Alex. I love Alex so much. And she has been tapped by Yale to be part of a secret society. So the Ninth House is literally referencing a fake extra house part of the society. So if you don't know anything about Yale, there are secret societies, and yes, they are real and absolutely ridiculous and probably do some of the shit that's in this book, to be honest. But the Ninth House is technically a made-up one. It's called Lethe House, and she has a special gift of seeing ghosts when no one else can, and so it makes her especially equipped for this because the secret societies in this book do some horrible things that attract spirits, etc. It's very magical. It's very dark academia. It's very cool. It is very cool and dark, and I love it. So basically the main plot point in this one is that her mentor has disappeared and they're trying to figure out how to get him back, what happened, etc. And we're trying to figure out exactly what happened to Alex as well. So this was just so good. And my husband ended up really liking it. I read it with him. I don't know if I said that already, but he loved it, and we ended up reading this before Hellbent came out, and then we read Hellbent together as well. The next one that I read is the chunkiest book that I read this month, and I am so proud of myself for getting through it, to be honest, even though it wasn't like my favorite book, but it's Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. But I ended up giving this a 2.5. It's just, the writing is phenomenal. The writing is phenomenal, but the actual contents of it it's not something I'm super fan of. It's just, there's a lot of stuff in here that is very dark. Every possible trigger warning imaginable is in this book, so I would definitely tread lightly with this one. And there's just something about it that I couldn't stop reading, but I also like didn't love it at the same time. It's really hard to describe. But we were following basically 3 main characters in India and how their lives intersect and how they affect each other. And it's following mostly this really wealthy family that has connections over everything, and you just don't mess with this family, and their orbit kind of dragging people in and dragging them down. So it's just so dark. It's so dark, but it's based on like real history. And our author actually lived in India for a really long time. She's from there, her family's from there, and she is a journalist. So her writing is just so good. It's easily understandable and digestible for this big of a story and the contents within, but it's just, the subject material is just maybe a little too difficult, and I am undecided if I will be continuing, because this is going to be a trilogy, so I am undecided if I will be continuing on in this. If I do, I'll probably just get it on Kindle through my library, because I don't know about it. I don't know, I'm undecided. The next book that I read as a kind of breather from Age of Vice was Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna McGuire, and I ended up giving this a 3.5. I thought I only gave it a 3, but I gave it a 3.5. And I agree with that. It's interesting. This is a little novella, and it's basically following a group of children it's called the Wayward Children series, and it's following a group of children who have been to portal lands and have basically been spit back out for one reason or another back into the real world, and they want to go home. which to them is the portal world, because each portal world basically lets them live how they want to actually live. Although there is another school that's not this one where people don't want to go back. So we haven't talked about that really. It's just the kids who want to go back desperately. So this one is following one main character, even though there's a lot of different people. It's following one main character, and she has just been spit out. She's brand new to being back in the real world, and she is sent to this wayward house, and she is trying to deal with the fact that her brain doesn't work the same way anymore, and she's thrown into this environment where there's tons of kids everywhere who are completely different than her, but had the same issue of their brains work very differently now. But it's very interesting. There's a lot of different weird characters. There's some really heart-rending moments in this. This is so much darker than I thought it was going to be. This is not a lighthearted, whimsical story. It's like dark whimsy. It's so, there are some parts that I was like, there's one thing that I was really sad at. One of the characters dies. It's a murder mystery as well. This is basically a murder mystery. One character dies. I'm not going to say who, obviously, but after they die, they say that her door's been waiting for her this whole time in this very specific location. And I was like, I almost started sobbing. I was so sad because it was there. Because all these kids want to do is go home. And the fact that her door really was waiting for her open, I was like, she just couldn't find it. Okay, I gotta move on because I'm getting like really sad, but they're really good. I have the second book upstairs and I cannot wait to try it. The stack is starting to lean. It's because I'm on these stupid cushions. I'll move it afterwards. The next book that I read is actually for a vlog that is coming out today, because this isn't coming out until I don't know when this is coming out. I think this is probably coming out Thursday, but depending on everything. But the next book that I read is in that vlog, and it is a new horror, and it's called Episode 13, and wow, was this disappointing. First of all, would not recommend reading it at all. It is so dry and so boring. You have to do the audiobook if you want to read this. You have to, unless you don't have the option of doing it. But you need to do the audiobook because it is sound effects, a full audio cast. The audiobook makes it compelling. Just reading it, dry, so dry. But I think I gave this 2.75 because there was a section in the middle right there. This section right here, loved it. The rest of it, no. Then the ending was so bad. If the ending was good, it just wasn't what I wanted. This is following a group of paranormal investigators, and they got the go-ahead to go into this house that has never been explored before, and so they're setting up their cameras, etc., and they're trying to look for paranormal investigations, and their stick is one of the members is a debunker. She's a physicist, PhD in physics, and so she spends her time debunking the stuff that they found, so it's kind of their like gimmick. And this is actual real haunting. So the premise is so good, and I watch tons of paranormal ghost hunting shows because I find them wildly entertaining, but this was not it. This did not work. I'm so sad that this didn't work because it was one of my most anticipated books of 2023. 23 books to read in 2023. This was one of them. 2.75. The next book was also part of that vlog where I read most anticipated books 23, and this was one of my 5-star predictions, The Stolen Heir, and it is not a 5-star. It was not a 5-star. It was only a 4. And I don't know if it's because I just rushed through it too fast, but I think, I talk about it in the video, but I'm pretty sure the problem is that I did not remember anything from The Cruel Prince. I didn't think I would need to remember anything other than the little brother Oak exists, and that's it. I didn't think I'd need to remember anything else other than that Elfheim exists and it's magical. This was almost a continuation on the series because you're following Ren, who is part of the Court of Teeth, and I totally forgot about the Court of Teeth was the court that was the bad guys in the other one, and I was like, crap. So you follow a lot of the same storylines from those books, and I couldn't remember any of them, and they definitely assumed you remembered some stuff I did not. So I got like 100 pages in, or 50 pages in, and I had to stop and actually go reread the synopses of the 3 books because I was like, I don't remember any of this stuff, and it's really hurting my reading experience. I also felt like this book jumped in a little bit too fast. So this one is following Oak, Jude's younger brother, and I thought it was going to be in his story, like his point of view, but it's not. It's actually in Ren, which I'm really happy about because I really, really like her. But I couldn't remember her. Like, she's in the books. I could not remember her. So that definitely hurt. And it just jumped you in way too fast. I needed a couple more chapters of just Ren before they introduced Oak, because I mean, it jumped in there very quickly and felt a little insta-lovey at the beginning. That did kind of go away, but it felt a little weird insta-lovey and odd. So I just, yeah, this was a 4. This was probably one of my more disappointing. Like, I still loved it, but it was highly disappointing because I thought I was going to be like gripped with it, reading it, like, oh my god, this is the best book I've read this month. That was not the case, unfortunately, but I still did really enjoy it, and I'm really excited because it set up the next book amazing. Okay, and my last book that I just finished yesterday with my husband, and my best book of January, Hellbent. Yes to literally everything in this book. It was so good. They did everything I wanted them to do, plus so much more. The only issue is I did wish that there was more society in this. In the first book, it was very much about Alex dealing with the societies and their rituals and all that stuff, which I found fascinating. It definitely took that out of this one because they were dealing with situations at hand. There was a decent amount of it at the beginning, but as the situation became more fraught, that kind of fell by the wayside. So I hope in the third book they bring a little bit more of that back. But yeah, this is a 5-star. 5-star all day. This is following Ninth House, and the continuation of that, that's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to ruin anything if you haven't read Ninth House and you expect to, but this was such a good follow-up. I was so worried that she was not going to be able to continue the magical feeling that Ninth House gave me, and this just, yeah. Easy 5 stars. Easy 5 stars. I adore this. I love Alex so much. I love all the characters so much that I just, oh my gosh, it's so good. And I loved the end to end. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. The end, like the last chapter, had me howling. I was cackling so hard. I cannot believe what she did in the last chapter, and I was just like, this is genius. This is absolutely genius. And it actually brought my husband around. My husband was a little iffy towards the end. He was like, I don't know, because there was an issue with a character he really liked, and then the end happened and he was like, we were both cackling, absolutely cackling, and I cannot wait what they're gonna do about the situation in the third book. And I really hope it's not 3 years before we get the next one. I will not survive if I have to wait 3 years. So I absolutely love this. This turned around my whole reading month. Oh, it was so good. It was so good. So these are my books this month. They're still crooked. I can't get them. I'm annoyed. The stack is too heavy. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. The video's almost over. I don't want to deal with it. But it was an interesting reading month. I definitely feel like there were some major highlights and some major downers. But overall, I think it was okay. I'm really hoping for better vibes in February. I'm going to be more picky about what I pick in February, and we're going to see what happens. But make sure you subscribe for more content. In February, I'm going to have, lots more reading, hopefully. Hopefully I continue enjoying reading, because I don't want to be in a book slump. I'm terrified of being book slumps. And make sure to let me know if you've read any of these, what you thought about them, whether you liked them, didn't like them. If you didn't like stuff, you didn't like stuff. If I don't agree, everyone has their own opinion, and my stomach is growling so loud. I hope you heard that. And yeah, make sure you comment, like I said, and like the video. And that's all I've got for you today. So that was January. January is all wrapped up. It is time to go into February, and I will see you guys in the next video.